everybody. Welcome to my channel and another reading of philosophy 101. So let's take a break for TV because we are continuously India versus Pakistan men's cricket match as a part of the Asia Cup exactly at this time. So we prioritize those at the first time. We have this
విశ్వగారు మీ వాయిస్ నాకేమీ అర్థం కాలే.
Okay, are you able to hear what I'm saying?
Yeah, now it is clear.
Okay, so what I was saying was we took 3 weeks break because at the same time slot we were having India versus Pakistan Asia Cup matches T20. It was good entertainment, and now we are back to doing our philosophy 101 reading, which is Sophie's World. So with that said, we stopped at a chapter called Berkeley with a J, Jerkley or whatever last time, and this week we are going to study this next chapter called The Enlightenment, basically. So with that said,
Okay.
do you want to start, Eskaru, and then we'll both read together?
Okay. I'll be doing Sophie's part.
Yes.
Okay. The Enlightenment. From the way needles are made to the way cannons are founded. Hilda had just begun the chapter on the Renaissance when she heard her mother come in the front door. She looked at the clock. It was 4 in the afternoon. Her mother ran upstairs and opened Hilda's door.
Didn't you go to the church?
Yes, I did.
But what did you wear?
What I am wearing now?
You mean your nightgown?
It's an old stone church from the Middle Ages.
Hilda,
She let the ring binder fall into her lap and looked up at her mother. I forgot the time, Mom. I'm sorry, but I'm reading something terribly exciting. Her mother couldn't help smiling. It's a magic book, added Hilda.
okay. Happy birthday once again, Hilda.
Hey, I don't know if I can take that phrase anymore.
But I haven't. I'm just going to rest for a while. Then I'll start fixing a great dinner. I managed to get hold of some strawberries.
Okay, I'll go on reading. Her mother left and Hilda read on. Sophie is following Hermes through the town. In Alberto's hall, she finds another card from Lebanon. This, too, is dated June 15th. Hilda was just beginning to understand the system of the dates. The cards dated before June 15 are copies of cards Hilda had already received from her dad. But those with today's date are reaching her for the first time via the ring binder. Dear Hilda, now Sophie is coming to the philosopher's house. She will soon be 15, but you were 15 yesterday. Or is it today, Hilda? If it is today, it must be late then. But our watches do not always agree. So this is what is in the card. Okay. Hilda read how Alberto told Sophie about the Renaissance and the new science, the 17th century rationalists, and British empiricism. She jumped at every new card and birthday greeting that her father had stuck into the story. He got them to fall out of an exercise book, turned up inside a banana skin, and hide inside a computer program. Without the slightest effort, he could get Alberto to make a slip of the tongue and call Sophie Hilda. On the top of everything else, he got Hermes to say, Happy birthday, Hilda. Hilda agreed with Alberto that he was going a bit too far, comparing himself with God and Providence. But whom was she actually agreeing with? Wasn't it her father who put those reproachful or self reproachful words in Alberto's mouth? She decided that the comparison with God was not so crazy after all. Her father really was like an almighty God for Sophie's world. When Alberto got to Berkeley, Hilda was at least as enthralled as Sophie had been. But what would happen now? There had been all kinds of hints that something special was going to happen as soon as they got to that philosopher who had denied the existence of a material world outside human consciousness. The chapter begins with Alberto and Sophie standing at the window, seeing the little plane with the long happy birthday streamer waving behind it. At the same time, dark clouds begin to gather over the town. So, this is what is on the card. So, to be or not to be is not the whole question. The question is also who we are. Are we really human beings of flesh and blood? Does our world consist of real things? Or are we encircled by the mind? Okay, not so surprising that Sophie starts biting her nails. Nail biting had never been one of Hilda's bad habits, but she didn't feel particularly pleased with herself right now. Then, finally, it was all out in the open. For us, for you and me, this will or spirit that is the cause of everything in everything could be Hilda's father. Are you saying he's been a kind of god for us?
To be perfectly candid, yes, he should be ashamed of himself.
What about Hilda herself?
She's an angel, Sophie.
An angel?
Hilda is the one this spirit turns to.
With that, Sophie tears herself away from Alberto and runs out into the storm. Could it be the same storm that raged over Berkeley with Jay last night, a few hours after Sophie ran through the town? As she ran, one thought kept going round and round in her mind. Tomorrow is my birthday. Isn't it extra bitter to realize that life is only a dream on the day before your 15th birthday? It's like dreaming you won a million and then just as you're getting the money, you wake up. Sophie ran across the squelching playing field. Minutes later, she saw someone come running toward her. It was her mother. The sky was pierced again and again by angry darts of lightning. When they reached each other, Sophie's mother put her arm around her.
What's happening to us, little one?
I don't know, Sophie sobbed. It's like a bad dream. Hilda felt the tears start. ఏమన్నా అన్నారా?
No, no, I didn't say anything. I was just laughing.
Okay. Yeah. Hilda felt the tears start. To be or not to be? That is the question. She threw the ring binder to the end of the bed and stood up. She walked back and forth across the floor. At last, she stopped in front of the brass mirror where she remained until her mother came to say dinner was ready. When Hilda heard the knock on the door, she had no idea how long she had been standing there. But she was perfectly sure, that her reflection had winked with both eyes. She tried to be the grateful birthday girl all through dinner, but her thoughts were with Sophie and Alberto all the time. How would things go for them now that they know it was Hilda's father who decided everything? Although knew was perhaps an exaggeration. It was nonsense to think they knew anything at all. Wasn't it only her father who let them know things? Still, the problem was the same, however you looked at it. As soon as Sophie and Alberto knew how everything hung together, they were in a way at the end of the road. She almost choked on a mouthful of food as she suddenly realized that the same problem possibly applied to her own world too. People had progressed steadily in their understanding of natural laws. Could history simply continue to all eternity once the last piece of jigsaw puzzle of philosophy and science had fallen into place? Wasn't there a connection between the development of ideas and science on the one hand and the greenhouse effect and deforestation on the other? Maybe it was not so crazy to call man's thirst for knowledge a fall from grace. The question was so huge and so terrifying that Hilda tried to forget it again. She would probably understand much more as she read further in her father's birthday book.
Happy birthday to you. So before I start, Vamsi Garu has joined the panel. Hello, sir. Welcome to the panel.
Namaskaran. Good morning.
Good
Namaste.
morning, Vamsi Garu.
Morning.
Morning is here.
So, happy birthday to you, sang her mother when they were done with their ice cream and Italian strawberries. Now we'll do whatever you chose. You choose.
I know it sounds a bit crazy, but all I want to do is read my present from Dad.
Well, as long as it doesn't make you completely delirious.
No way.
We could share a pizza while we watch the mystery on TV. That mystery on
Yes,
TV.
yes, if you like. Hilda suddenly thought of the way Sophie spoke to her mother. Dad had hopefully not written any of Hilda's mother into the character of the other mother. Just to make sure, she decided not to mention the white rabbit being pulled out of the top hat. Not today, at least. Even I'm bored of this white rabbit. Okay. By the way, she said as she was leaving the table,
What?
I can't find my gold crucifix anywhere. Her mother looked at her with an enigmatic expression.
I found it down by the dock weeks ago. You must have dropped it. You untidy scamp.
Did you mention it to Dad?
Let me think. Yes, I believe I may have.
Where is it then? Her mother got up and went to her own jewelry case. Hilda heard a little cry of surprise from the bedroom. She came quickly back into the living room.
Right now, I can't seem to find it.
I thought as much. She gave her mother a hug and ran upstairs to her room. At last, now she could read on about Sophie and Alberto. She sat up on the bed as before with the heavy ring binder resting against her knees and began the next chapter. This is the chapter. Okay. Sophie woke up the next morning when her mother came into the room carrying a tray loaded with birthday presents. She had stuck a flag in an empty soda bottle. It says, Happy birthday, Sophie. Sophie rubbed the sleep from her eyes. She tried to remember what had happened the night before. But it was all like jumbled pieces of a jigsaw puzzle. One of the pieces was Alberto, another was Hilda and the Major. A third was Berkeley, and a fourth, the other Berkeley with a J. The blackest piece of all was the violent storm. She had practically been in shock. Her mother had rubbed her dry with a towel and simply put her to bed with a cup of hot milk and honey. She had fallen asleep immediately. I think I'm still alive, she said weakly.
Of course, you are alive, and today you are 15 years old.
Are you quite sure?
Quite sure. Shouldn't a mother know when her only child was born? June 15, 1975, at 1:30. Sophie, it was the happiest moment of my life.
Are you sure it isn't all only a dream?
It must be a good dream to wake up to rolls and soda and birthday presents.
She put the tray of presents on a chair and disappeared out of the room for a second. When she came back, she was carrying another tray with rolls and soda. She put it on the end of the bed. It was the signal for the traditional birthday morning ritual with the unpacking of presents and her mother's sentimental flights back to her first contractions 15 years ago. Her mother's present was a tennis racket. Sophie had never played tennis, but there were some open air courts a few minutes from close. Her father had sent her a mini TV and FM radio. The screen was no bigger than an ordinary photograph. There were also presents from old aunts and friends of the family.
Presently, her mother presently her mother said, "Do you think I should stay home from work today?
No, why should you?
You were very upset yesterday. If it goes on, I think we should make an appointment to see a psychiatrist."
That won't be necessary.
Was it the storm or was it Alberto?
What about you? You said, What's happening to us, little one?
I was thinking of you running around town to meet some mysterious person. Maybe it's my fault.
It's not anybody's fault that I'm taking a course in philosophy in my leisure time. Just go to work. School doesn't start till 10, and we are only getting our grades and sitting around.
Do you know what you're going to get?
More than I got last semester, at any rate. Not long after her mother had gone, the telephone rang. Sophie Amundsen.
This is Alberto.
Huh.
The major didn't spare any ammunition last night.
What do you mean?
The thunderstorm, Sophie.
I don't know what to think.
That's the finest virtue a genuine philosopher can have. I'm proud of how much you have learned in such a short time.
I'm scared that nothing is real.
That's called existential angst or dread, and is, as a rule, only a stage on the way to new consciousness.
I think I need a break from the course.
Are there that many frogs in the garden at the moment?
Sophie started to laugh. Alberto continued.
I think it would be better to persevere. Happy birthday, by the way. We must complete the course by Midsummer Eve. That's our last chance.
Our last chance for what?
Are you sitting comfortably? We're going to have to spend some time on this. You understand?
I'm sitting down.
You remember Descartes?
I think, therefore I am.
With regard to our own methodical doubt, we are right now starting from scratch. We don't even know whether we think. It may turn out that we are thoughts, and that is quite different from thinking. We have good reason to believe that we are merely being invented by Hilda's father as a kind of birthday diversion from the major's daughter from Lilsand. For the major's daughter from Lilsand. Do you see?
Yes.
But therein also lies a built-in contradiction. If we are fictive, as in we are a work of fiction, we have no right to believe anything at all. In which case, this whole telephone conversation is purely imaginary.
And we haven't the tiniest bit of free will because it's the major who plans everything we say and do. So we can just as well hang up now.
No, now you are oversimplifying things.
Explain it then.
Would you claim that people plan everything they dream? It may be that Hilda's father knows everything we do. It may just be, it may be just as difficult to escape his omniscience as it is to run away from your own shadow. However, and this is where I have begun to devise a plan. It is not certain that the major has already decided on everything that is to happen. He may not decide before the very last minute, that is to say, in the moment of creation. Precisely at such moments, we may possibly have an initiative of our own which guides what we say and do. Such an initiative would naturally constitute extremely weak impulses compared to the major's heavy artillery. We are very likely defenseless against the intrusive external forces such as talking dogs, messages in bananas, and thunderstorms booked in advance. But we cannot rule out our stubbornness, however weak it may be.
How could that be possible?
The Major naturally knows everything about our little world, but that does not mean he is all powerful. At any rate, we must try to live as if he is not.
I think I see where you're going with this.
The trick would be if we could manage to do something all on our own, something the Major would not be able to discover.
How can we do that if we don't even exist?
Who said we don't exist? The question is whether or not we are, but what we are and who we are. Even if it turns out that we are merely impulses in the Major's dual personality, that need not take our little bit of existence away from us.
Or our free will?
I'm working on it, Sophie.
But Hilda's father must be fully aware that you're working on it.
Decidedly so. But he doesn't know what the actual plan is. I am attempting to find an Archimedean point.
An Archimedean point?
Archimedes was a Greek scientist who said, "Give me a firm point on which to stand, and I will move the earth." Profound. That's the kind of point we must find to move ourselves out of the Major's inner universe.
That would be quite a feat.
But we won't manage to slip away before we have finished the philosophy course. While that lasts, he has too firm a grip on us. He has clearly decided that I am to guide you through the centuries right up to our own time. But we only have a few days left before he boards a plane somewhere down in the Middle East, Lebanon to be precise. If we haven't succeeded in detaching ourselves from this gluey imagination before he arrives at Jerkly, we are done for.
You're frightening me.
First of all, I shall give you the most important facts about the French Enlightenment. Then we shall take the main outline of Kant's philosophy so that we can get to Romanticism. Hegel will also be a significant part of the picture for us. And in talking about him, he will unavoidably touch on Kierkegaard's indignant clash with Hegelian philosophy. He shall briefly talk about Marx, Darwin, and Freud. And if we can imagine a few closing comments on Sartre and existentialism, our plan can be put into operation. So essentially, um, the author is giving us a map of what's coming in terms of the
Oh,
next chapters, basically.
hmm. That's an awful lot for 1 week.
That's why we must begin at once. Can you come over right away?
I have to go to school. We are having a class get together and then we get our grades.
Drop it. If you're only fictive, it's your pure imagination that candy and soda have any taste.
But my grades?
Sophie, either you're living in a wondrous universe on a tiny planet in one of many 100 billion galaxies, or else you are the result of a few electromagnetic impulses in the major sand. And you're talking about grades? You ought to be ashamed of yourself.
I'm sorry.
But you'd better go to school before we meet. It might have a bad influence on Hilda if you cut your last school day. She probably goes to school even on her birthday. She's an angel, you know.
So I'll come straight from school.
You can meet me at the major's cabin.
The major's cabin? Okay. Now there is a click. Okay, reading
Click,
is done.
click
Okay.
means hung up, basically. The phone ended, phone call ended.
Okay. Phone. Okay, correct. Okay. Hilda let the ring binder slide into her lap. Her father had given her conscience dig there. She did cut her last day at school. How sneaky of him. She sat for a while, wondering what the plan was that Alberto was devising. Should she sneak a look at the last page? No, that would be cheating. She would better hurry up and read it to the end. But she was convinced Alberto was right on one important point. One thing was that her father had an overview of what was going to happen to Sophie and Alberto. But while he was writing, he probably didn't know everything that would happen. He might dash off something in a great hurry, something he might not notice till long after he had written it. In a situation like that, Sophie and Alberto would have a certain amount of leeway. Once again, Hilda had an almost transfiguring conviction that Sophie and Alberto really existed. Still, still waters run deep, she thought to herself. Why did that idea come to her? It was certainly not a thought that rippled the surface. Okay. Then, at school, Sophie received lots of attention because it was her birthday. Her classmates were already keyed up by thoughts of summer vacation and grades and the sodas on the last day of school. The minute the teacher dismissed the class with her best wishes for the vacation, Sophie ran home. Joanna tried to slow her down, but Sophie called over her shoulder that there was something she just had to do. In the mailbox, she found two cards from Lebanon. They were both birthday cards. Happy birthday, 15 years. One of them was to Hilda Moller Nag, care of Sophie Amundsen, but the other one was to Sophie herself. Both cards were stamped UN Battalion June 15. Sophie read her own card first. So this is what the card says. Dear Sophie Amundsen, today you're getting a card as well. Happy birthday, Sophie, and many thanks for everything you have done for Hilda. Best regards, Major Albert Nag. Sophie was not sure how to react. Now that Hilda's father had finally written to her too, Hilda's card read, Dear Hilda, I have no idea what day or time it is in Lil Sand. But as I said, it doesn't make much difference. If I know you, I'm not too late for a last or next to last greeting from down here. But don't stay up too late. Alberto will soon be telling you about the French Enlightenment. He will concentrate on 7 points, and they are opposition to authority, rationalism, the Enlightenment movement, cultural optimism, the return to nature, natural religion, and human rights. The major The major was obviously still keeping his eye on them. Sophie let herself in and put her report card with all the A's on the kitchen table. Then she slipped through the hedge and ran into the woods. Soon she was once again rowing across the little lake. Alberto was sitting on the doorstep when she got to the cabin. He invited her to sit beside him. The weather was fine, although a slight mist of damp, raw air was coming off the lake. It was as though it had not quite recovered from the storm. Alberto
Let's
Gaarder.
get going right away.
After Hume, the next great philosopher was the German
Probably
Immanuel
that's
Kant.
mine.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, this is Alberto. So Alberto is getting going right away. Okay. After Hume, the next great philosopher was the German Immanuel Kant. But some people say Kant, but anyway. But France had also had many important thinkers in the 18th century. I was just looking at the list of things, right? French and Enlightenment. A lot of the issues that we have with a lot of these words are the lot of words where we have issues came from there, as you can tell, right? Rationalism, human rights,
Mm,
you know, yeah, opposition to authority, etc., etc.
authority.
Sort
Mm.
of, yeah. I just got caught up in the list. Anyway, Immanuel Kant. But France also had very important thinkers in the 18th century. We could say that the philosophical center of gravity had had been Europe in the 18th century. Europe in the 18th century was in England in the first half, in France in the middle, and in Germany towards the end of it. So the philosophical centers of gravity shifted from England in the first half of the 18th century to France in the middle, and then to Germany towards the end of the 18th century. A shift
A
from
shift
west to
from
east. Yeah,
a shift from west to east, in other words.
precisely. Let me outline some of the ideas that many of the French Enlightenment philosophers had in common. The important names are Montesquieu, Voltaire, and Rousseau, but there were many, many others. I shall concentrate on 7 points.
Thanks. That I am painfully aware of.
We had already told her the list, right? But more importantly, remember Sophie got all A's. What a bright kid.
Mm,
Huh?
correct.
Sophie
Sophie
handed him the
handed
card.
him the card.
Yeah, go ahead.
Mm.
Go ahead. Please.
ఇది ఎవరు చదువుతున్నారు? So it's everything from the card, is it? Or
Okay,
Alberto is
let me.
reading? Uh,
Sophie handed him the card from Hilda's father. Alberto sighed deeply. He could have saved himself the trouble. The first keywords then are opposition to authority. Many of the French Enlightenment philosophers visited England, which was in many ways more liberal than their home country, and were intrigued by the English natural sciences, especially Newton, yeah, and his universal physics. But they were also inspired by British philosophy, in particular by Locke and his political philosophy. Once back in France, they made they became increasingly opposed to the old authority. They thought it was essential to remain skeptical of all inherited truths, the idea being that the individual must find his own answer to every question. The tradition of Descartes was very inspiring in this respect.
because he was the one who built everything up from the ground.
Quite so. The opposition to authority was not least directed against the power of the clergy, the king, and the nobility. During the 18th century, that means they were directed against them, right?
Well,
The clergy, which is the
excuse
church.
me.
Yes, sir.
What page are you on?
We are on page number 180.
Thanks.
Yeah. So the opposition to authority was not least directed against the power of the clergy, the king, and the nobility. During the 18th century, these institutions had far more power in France than they had in England.
Then came the French Revolution.
Yes, 1789. But remember, this was after US got independence. But the revolutionary ideas arose uh, much earlier. The next keyword, so this is opposition to authority, is what I'm talking about right now, or Alberto is talking about. The next keyword is rationalism.
I thought rationalism went out with Hume.
Hume himself did not die until 1776. That was about 20 years after Montesquieu and only 2 years before Voltaire and Rousseau, who both died in 1778. But all three had been to England and were familiar with with the philosophy of Locke. You may recall that Locke was not consistent in his empiricism. He believed, for example, that faith in God and certain moral norms were inherent in human reason. This idea is also the core of the French Enlightenment.
You also said that the French have always been more rational than the British.
Yes, a difference that goes right back to the Middle Ages. When the British speak of common sense, the French usually speak of evident in quotes. The English expression means that what everybody knows, whereas the French means what is obvious to one's reason, that is.
I see.
Like the humanists of antiquity, such as Socrates and the Stoics, most of the Enlightenment philosophers, right? So Alberto is calling these philosophers that belong to this era as the Enlightenment philosophers. The Enlightenment philosophers had an unshakable reason. This was so characteristic that the French Enlightenment is often called the Age of Reason. The new natural sciences had revealed that nature was subject to reason. Now, the Enlightenment philosophers saw it as their duty to lay a foundation for morals, religion, and ethics in accordance with man's immutable reason. This led to the Enlightenment movement. Immutable means timeless, right? Something that cannot be muted with the time.
Hmm.
Yeah.
The third point.
Okay. So we are done with appeal to authority or whatever, lack of opposition to authority and rationalism. Now the third point. Now was the time to start enlightening the masses. Okay. So the enlightened minority now will start enlightening the masses. Okay. This was to be this was to be the basis for a better society. People thought that poverty and oppression were the fault of ignorance and superstition. Great attention was therefore focused on the education of children and of the people. It is no accident that the science of pedagogy was founded during the Enlightenment.
So schools date from the Middle Ages and pedagogy from the Enlightenment.
Yes, Largar has entered the panel. Hello, sir. So, yeah, you could say that. So, schools date to the Middle Ages and the pedagogy from the Enlightenment. So, let's spend 1 second on that dictionary definition of pedagogy because I have some
Pedagogy.
idea.
Hmm. So schools were always there, but what is this pedagogy that?
Pedagogy, pronounced pedagogy, is a term that refers to the method of how teachers teach in theory and in practice. Pedagogy is formed by an educator's teaching beliefs and concepts and the interplay between culture and different ways to learn. So, the dictionary meaning is the method and practice of teaching, especially as an academic subject or theoretical concept. Okay. So, if somebody is and nowadays, pedagogy is also used in with a negative connotation sometimes, which says
Something like brainwashing, huh?
if you are too theoretical, right,
Hmm.
without really giving examples or very dry subject, right? So if somebody is presenting a subject in a very dry manner or without many examples or without reaching the audience, they say it's very pedagogical, basically.
Hmm.
You know, that means you are treating it like an academician. You make it a little bit more real for the audience. Okay, excuse me. So the schools were always there, but the pedagogy can be traced back to this Enlightenment. You could say that the greatest monument to the Enlightenment movement was characteristically enough a huge encyclopedia. I refer to the encyclopedia in 28 volumes published during the years from 1751 to 1772. All the great philosophers and men of letters contributed to it. So, quote, everything is to be found here, it was said, from the way needles are made to the way cannons are founded.
Punchline of the
So,
Yeah,
chapter.
what one quick question: what
yes,
would
sir.
be possibly the difference between school and pedagogy? What's the
So,
difference? I didn't get the difference.
if a subject is taught in a very academic way, theoretical way, in a dry manner, that refers to pedagogical. So, you may or may not understand it. whereas a school is meant to be a place where people actually learn things, right? The teaching method changes to fit the environment. So pedagogy is more referring to a method of teaching more than the teaching itself, basically.
Okay, ideally, right? But back when I went to school, this was not my experience. So, but that's a
Right,
different
right.
story.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So if you go to, like,
Bodhana
for example,
Shastram.
yeah, so if you go to a PhD class, for example, right, suddenly, if you go to a quantum physics class and that is taught to PhD students in physics, you would expect it to be highly pedagogical, right?
Hmm.
Because a very experienced theoretical physicist is teaching to students who are also advanced, right? Whereas if you go to like a trade school where they're teaching you how to take car apart, right? There it's more like there's no pedagogy there. There it's all practical. There's a car and you're actually playing with the nuts and bolts, and it's more practical basically.
Right. Going back to it's evident based, not just common sense. Yeah.
Or it's very dry, right? Theoretical.
Right. Right. Right.
Yeah. Okay.
Got it.
So where are we?
Okay. The next point is cultural optimism.
Okay. Would you oblige me by putting that card away while I'm talking? So she's just focusing on the list as opposed to listening to the
Right. She
list,
just
as
want
you
to
can
cover
see.
all the list. So I'm like, okay, next topic is cultural optimism.
Yeah, exactly. So
Okay. So you asked me to put that away, and I'm like, excuse me.
the Enlightenment philosophers thought that once reason and knowledge became widespread, humanity would make great progress. It could only be a question of time before irrationalism and ignorance would give way to the enlightened humanity. This thought was dominant in Western Europe until the last couple of decades. Today, we are no longer so convinced that all developments are for the good, basically.
Hmm. But this criticism of civilization was already being voiced by French Enlightenment philosophers.
maybe we, maybe we should have. Okay, so this the next line is also yours.
Oh, maybe we should have listened to them.
For some, the new catchphrase was back to nature. But nature to the enlightened philosophers meant almost the same as reason, since human reason was a gift of nature rather than of religion or of civilization. I think pay attention to this terminology. It's used today. Actually, even today we have the same problems. It was observed that the so-called primitive peoples were frequently both healthier and happier than Europeans, and this, it was said, was because they had not been civilized, right? So primitive people were healthier and happier because they were less civilized. How can that be? Rousseau pointed out or proposed the catchphrase, we should return to nature, for nature is good, and man is by nature good. It is civilization which ruins him. Rousseau also believed that the child should be allowed to remain in its naturally innocent state as long as possible. It would not be wrong to say that the idea of intrinsic value of childhood dates from the Enlightenment. Previously, childhood had been considered merely a preparation for adult life. But we are all human beings and we live our life on this earth even when we are children.
I should think so.
Religion, they thought, had to be made natural.
What exactly did they mean by that?
They meant that religion also been had to be brought into harmony with nature, natural reason. There were many who fought for what one could call a natural religion, and this was the sixth point on the list. At the time, there were a lot of confirmed materialists who did not believe in a God and who professed to atheism. But most of the Enlightenment philosophers thought it was irrational to imagine a world without God. The world was far too rational for that. Newton held the same view, for example. It was also considered rational to believe in the immortality of the soul. Just as for Descartes, whether or not man had an immortal soul was held to be more of a question of reason than of faith.
That I find very strange. To me, it's a typical case of what you believe, not of what you know.
That's because you don't live in the 18th century. According to the Enlightenment philosophers, what religion needed was to be stripped of all irrational dogmas or doctrines that had got attached to the simple teachings of Jesus during the course of the ecclesiastical history.
I see.
Many people consequently professed to what is known as deism.
What is that?
By deism, we mean a belief that God created the world ages and ages ago, but had not revealed himself to the world since. Thus, God is reduced to the supreme being in quotes, who only reveals himself to mankind through nature and natural laws, never in any supernatural way. Which means this entire revelation or whatever through an angel or through a booming voice and all that goes away. So you have to search for God through natural laws and natural means by examining nature. We find a similar philosophical God in the writings of Aristotle. For him, God was the formal cause or first mover.
So now there's only one point left: human rights.
I even thinking because even yesterday we were having this conversation with somebody. Remember,
Yeah.
God and nature are separate, right? You
Yes.
go listen to the stream yesterday. That's what Aristotle would say. You examine nature, and through that, God reveals himself. Whereas the other side of the equation, right, which we need to understand, they say that you keep on looking at nature, God, you will not find God because God is separate and nature is separate, basically. And you are obligated to make that statement. So without this background, these kinds of conversations that happen and this background, it's very easy to confuse. What is the big deal? It is a big deal. People fought for centuries about it. Okay. So let's come to the human rights. And yet, this is perhaps the most important. On the whole, you could say the French Enlightenment was more practical than the English philosophy.
You mean they lived according to their philosophy?
Yes, very much so. The French Enlightenment philosophers did not content themselves with the theoretical views on man's place in society. They fought actively for what they called the natural rights of the citizen. At first, this took the form of a campaign against censorship for the freedom of the press, but also in matters of religion, morals, and politics. The individual's right to freedom of thought and utterance had to be secured. This they also fought for the abolition of slavery and for a more humane treatment of criminals.
I think I agree with most of that.
The principles of the inviolability of the individual culminated in the Declaration of the Rights of Man and Citizen adopted by the French National Assembly in 1785. This Declaration of Human Rights was the basis for our own Norwegian Constitution of 1814.
But a lot of people still have to fight for these rights.
Yes, unhappily. But the Enlightenment philosophers wanted to establish certain rights that everybody was entitled to simply by being born. That was what they meant by natural rights.
So, Viswagaru,
Yes, sir.
maybe this is beyond the jurisdiction of this book. Where did the French get their, basics or the foundational elements for this philosophy or these things? Where did they get them from? What
It was
would be
through
the
discussion.
source?
Uh, that's what the book is saying. The book said they went and observed. They visited UK, where there was some kind of. So, I mean, just to quickly give you a bird's eye view, right?
Yeah,
For a very long time, the church held sway on everything. So initially, there was the Greek philosophers and the whatever they used to call natural philosopher, the ancient philosophers, like Socrates, like Aristotle, and things like that. Then there was a break from that, and then there was a lot of church activity involved, where faith became important. While the philosophers were still there, um, the church gained a lot of power. But then in the UK, slowly that started. Um, they call them the Dark Ages. Then came this whole age of enlightenment or age of reason. Started in
right.
UK, these French philosophers had visited, discussed, so mostly through discussions, you know. when there is
So
no
the
war, when
French
people
got
are not fighting.
UK got it from British. Yeah, UK got it
Yeah,
from
yeah.
Greeks to, where it came to
So
Greeks.
basically, here it was saying, right, in the 18th century, the first part it was UK, then it moved to France, and then to Germany or something like that towards the
Rest of the
later period.
world.
Yeah,
Yeah, Europe.
and from there, yeah. So I mean, I'm sure they were kicking the ideas around, and then suddenly it became popular and it was adopted, basically.
Yeah, this might have happened over like hundreds of years, right?
Yeah, yeah, right. And it accelerated basically because remember that while all this was going on, the natural observation and science was also progressing in parallel. That's why I say, right, you don't have to have philosophy and science conflict with each other or religion and science conflict with each other in order to make progress, right? Newton was already a scientist, right? He may have believed in this supreme being or other things, immortality of soul and all that, but that didn't come in his way of experimenting and learning nature, basically, the natural laws.
Right, right,
Yeah. So, and that is where the question is: do you have to be an atheist to be a scientist? The answer is absolutely not.
right.
Right?
Aristotle was around uh, fourth century before the Common Era, right? I was
Correct.
thinking what might be happening in this part of the world in that time. So
In that
where
time,
the information went from, A to B to C.
yeah, yeah. So obviously, that's where you have to look at. I mean, how isolated. Maybe travel was not that easy. Harsh weather. Some of these are Western European countries, right? Survival itself was a problem.
Yeah,
So
weather
you
had
have
a
to look at
role,
the
right?
ancient history of all these countries in order to Europe to figure out uh, whether those ideas came. I mean, the church might have just removed all those ideas from the society also, right? So
Yeah, yeah,
it
yeah.
becomes very important. The role of the church becomes important. Anyway, so let's complete. We are almost there, so then we can discuss. Um, we still speak of natural right, which can often be in conflict with the laws of the land, and we constantly find individuals or even whole nations that claim this natural right when they rebel against anarchy, servitude, and oppression.
What about women's rights?
The French Revolution in 1787 established a number of rights for all citizens, but a citizen was nearly always considered to be a man. Yet it was the French Revolution that gave us the first inklings of feminism.
It was about time.
As early as 1787, the Enlightenment philosopher. So, show me one woman philosopher, then we'll talk, right? The Enlightenment philosopher Condorcet published a treatise on the rights of women. He held that women had the same natural rights as men. During the revolution of 1789, women were extremely active in the fight against the old feudal regime. For example, it was women who led the demonstrations that forced the king away from his palace in Versailles. Women's groups were formed in Paris. In addition to the demand for the same political rights as men, they also demanded changes in the marriage laws and in women's social conditions.
Did they get equal rights?
No, just as on many subsequent occasions, the question of women's rights was exploited in the heat of the struggle so that they can also be co opted into the revolution. As soon as things fell into place in a new regime, the old male dominated society was reintroduced.
Typical.
One of those who fought the hardest for the rights of women during the French Revolution was Olympe de Gouges. I don't know how to pronounce this, but in 1791, 2 years after the revolution, she published a declaration on the rights of women. The declaration on the rights of the citizen had not included any article on women's natural rights. Olympe de Gouges Gouge probably, now demanded all the same rights for women as for men.
What happened?
She was beheaded in 1793, and all political activity for women was banned.
How shameful.
It was not until the 19th century that feminism really got underway, not only in France, but also in the rest of Europe. Little by little, this struggle began to bear fruit. But in Norway, for example, women did not get the right to vote until 1913, and women in many parts of the world still have a lot to fight for.
They can count on my support.
Very good.
Alberto sat looking across at the lake. After a minute or two, he said,
That was more or less what I wanted to say about the Enlightenment.
"What do you mean by more or less?"
I have the feeling there won't be any more.
Because now Sophie is with this women right idi kada in her head. But as he said this, something began to happen in the middle of the lake. Something was bubbling up from the depths. A huge and hideous creature rose from the surface. "A sea serpent!" cried Sophie. The dark
Yeah,
monster
yeah.
coiled itself back and forth a few times and then disappeared back into the depths. The water was as still as before. Alberto had turned away.
Now we'll go inside, he said.
They went into the little hut. Sophie stood looking at the two pictures of Berkeley and Jerkley. She pointed to the picture of Jerkley and said, "I think Hilda lives somewhere inside that picture." An embroidered sampler now hung between the two pictures. It read, "Liberty, equality, and fraternity." Sophie turned to Alberto. "Did you hang that there?" He just shook his head with a disconsolate expression. Then Sophie discovered a small envelope on the mantelpiece. "To Hilda and Sophie," it said. Sophie knew at once who it was from, but it was a new turn of events that he had begun to count on her. She opened the letter and read aloud. "Dear both of you, Sophie's philosophy teacher ought to have underlined the significance of the French Enlightenment for the ideals and principles the UN is founded on. 200 years ago, the slogan Liberty, Equality, and Fraternity helped untie the people of France. Today, the same words should untie the whole world.
Unite,
It is
unite.
not. Oh, okay. Okay, 200 years ago, the slogan Liberty, Equality, and Fraternity helped unite the people of France. Today, the same words should unite the whole world. It is more important now than ever before to be one big family of man. Our descendants are our own children and grandchildren. What kind of world are they inheriting from us?" So that's what the card said. Okay. Hilda's mother was calling from downstairs that the mystery was starting in 10 minutes and that she had to put the pizza in the oven. Hilda was quite exhausted after all she had read. She had been up since 6 o'clock this morning. She decided to spend the rest of the evening celebrating her birthday with her mother. But first, she had to look something up in her encyclopedia. Gorge. No. Degorge. No again. Olympe de Gauge. Still a blank. This encyclopedia had not written one single word about the woman who was beheaded for her political commitment. Wasn't that scandalous? She was surely not just someone her father had thought up. Hilda ran downstairs to get a bigger encyclopedia. "I just have to look something up," she said to her astounded mother. She took the FORV to GP volume. Oh, okay. Maybe
Yeah, this
FOR
is some kind of, yeah.
encyclopedia volumes, naming names
So
of the volume.
basically, F to G. That is, so encyclopedia volumes are there, then they are alphabetically ordered. Right?
Mhm.
So that particular volume contained the starting from FORV to GP. That is the last word.
Mhm. Oh,
Yeah.
okay, okay. She took the FORV to GP volume of the Big Family Encyclopedia and ran up to her room again. Gosh, there she was. Gosh, Mary Olympe. 1748 to 1793.
That's Murray.
Marie.
Yeah.
Okay. ఏంటి FR author. Played a prominent.
1748 to 1793, French author.
Oh,
Played a
French author.
prominent role. I'll read it for you.
Mm.
French author played a prominent role during the French Revolution with numerous brochures on social questions and several plays. One of the few during the revolution who campaigned for human rights to apply to women. In 1791, she published Declaration on the Rights of Women, beheaded in 1793 for daring to defend Louis XVI and oppose Robespierre. So, what it literary L. Lacour, Les origins du feminisme contemporary in 1900. So, that is the reference, I guess. So, this was taken from that French book, basically. So, the origins of contemporary feminism, I guess. That's what it is. Yep.
Okay.
Oh, 1791, she published Declaration on the Rights of Women.
Correct.
And in 1900, someone else took this reference and wrote some other book, is it?
No, this reference, whatever we just now read about Marie Olympe, it came from that.
Oh,
The
that was
origins of
in
contemporary
19.
feminism, written by Lacour. That was the reference given in that encyclopedia.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So basically, all Sophie did was she took that encyclopedia and she tried to find the
Search.
entry for this lady.
Adi, with that ends enlightenment.
Yeah. So now you can actually, and now we can probably discuss where all these ideas came from. You can see, right? All the seeds were sown in the French Revolution, basically, or the French, in quotes, enlightenment.
Yeah. I, you know what I was wondering? There were like these other rest of the Europe, like you have Germany, Poland, and other places. Why the French had to lead this one, or why is it so important? We talk about only French, but not Germany or Poland or elsewhere.
So partially because they called it that, right? So they took whatever ideas they had, and then they said we are going to apply it to all human beings. So instead of saying the rights of French people, they removed that national affiliation and they said human rights, which is why it became it is as much about terminology and marketing as it is about the idea itself, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and of course it's all European. So because they are the colonizers, they write the history and they popularize these ideas. Because I just put in the chat, right? Well before
I
the
saw.
French
Yeah.
Revolution, we had this statement from the Maha Upanishad, right? That said, I am nijaha paro vetti ganana lagu chetasam.
Right.
Udara
This
charitanam tu vasudhaiva kutumbakam.
right. The entire universe is one family. Um,
Correct.
these guys are publishing in the 1700s and so on, but the print media, actual printing itself, has come to Europe in 1400s, like
Correct.
300 years after that. But then by the time back in India, nobody was writing anything. Forget like
No, India
publishing
was fighting for its own existence, right? Here,
existence.
Islamic conquest, the British imperialism and colonization, they didn't have any
Maybe it's
of that
right to
going on
say
there.
that was India's dark age, right?
Correct. Exactly. Correct. So that's it. It's a wonderful chapter.
Oh, are we
Very
not going to
interesting.
read the next one?
No, that's it, sir. We are going one chapter at a time and almost 1 hour, right? So
Fair
usually we
enough.
try to
Yeah.
keep these sessions short in this particular reading because it's very heavy duty material. I mean, just go back and contemplate on what all we read, these 7 principles and everything, feminism, the ideas that we are still today discussing and fighting about, all have origins in that place. And
Right.
to to really, without understanding the context, taking those terms and trying to apply it to make a buck, basically, which is what very unfortunately the leftists some of the shameless leftists in India do is very unfortunate. Basically, maybe they don't know any better. Let's put it that way, right?
Yeah. What I liked in that reading, what we just did is common sense versus evidence based. Now, we were always taught growing up, common sense is a word that we use regularly, right? But evidence based or evidence based, that would be more realistic,
Yeah. So that's where you get into this whole idea of subjective versus objective reality, right?
right?
So the subjective, there is subjective evidence, which means it is true only for me, versus objective evidence, which is true for everybody, right? So the physical evidence is objective; it's evident for everybody. It can be seen, it can be measured, etc. But there is a subjective part of life that is outside the realm of this whole evidence or objective evidence. So the thing is, how do you deal with it? That is the question, and that's where you enter into the realm of the philosophical thought process. Yes, right? And previously, it used to be one combined exercise because human experience is holistic. People used to search for holistic answers. Please explain both my subjective and objective reality. But then the European philosophers they separated things out, right, and said objective reality will be taken care of by science. Subjective reality is taken care of by nothing actually, because the church used to occupy the space. They rejected it. So any subjective experience based discussion is very dry in this day and age because it goes into this whole psychology, Freudian psychology, which is not a big fan of it, or neuroscience, which is just measuring brain activity. So
Right.
it it has become that pedagogical problem has arrived, is there in that very theoretical, very dry, very not very practical, so to speak. Like for example, even in that chapter, she said we have to go to a psychiatrist. Basically, it's not going to solve anything. Anyway,
Yeah. I mean, in this reading, we encountered the word philosophy multiple times, right?
yeah,
I was thinking, what could be the basis for the word itself? The philosophy, where did it come from? What is the underlying meaning and
yeah,
you
yeah.
know,
Look at the dictionary.
I just did. It
Uh,
says it come from Greece. It means love of wisdom, but
there
that's
you go.
incomplete.
Yeah,
Anyway,
so that's where see this entire book is Western philosophy 101 basically. So that word philosophy is there in all chapters basically, right? This is a
yeah,
history of European philosophy actually. This book, it is set in this Sophie's world, but it's not Sophie's world. It's the history of the European philosophical world basically. That is the
right.
beauty of the book, and that too being written by a Norwegian. She has a very very objective perspective on all this, which I absolutely appreciate.
Right. I mean, we use this word, day-to-day discussions, conversations, and so on. But when we use the word, at least when I use the word, I don't refer to love of wisdom. Philosophy means my way, my essence,
Mm.
or what I believe in, right? That's what I mean when I say philosophy. But here it's a totally different meaning altogether.
Yeah, yeah. Phil means love, so you know it has to be liking or love or appreciation for something, right?
Yeah. Good.
Okay. Shall we close, sir?
Yeah.
SK garu closing comments, lawyer garu closing comments, anything?
లేదండి, I'm good.
Good. Excellent. Lawyer garu is busy in the Agora, I guess. Okay. Viewers, thank you so much for listening to another reading. Quite fascinating. So when in the next reading, we'll get to another key figure in the entire the world of European philosophy, Kant or Kant, depending on how you want to pronounce. Okay. With that, thank you very much for listening. If you like the channel, please like and subscribe. If you have any questions, please put it in the comment. I'll try to answer them over the week. Okay. Have a wonderful Sunday.
Thank you.